Hi there. I'm so glad you're here. Your time is precious, and because of that, I want to let you know right away what you'll gain by listening to the very last second of this episode. My conversation with Naomi Tolentino Miranda focused on how we can shift from punitive to proactive and positive approaches when addressing chronic absenteeism. In this bonus episode, I highlight why addressing chronic absenteeism requires a fundamental shift from punitive approaches to preventative, individualized interventions that identify and remove specific barriers, keeping students from attending school regularly. You'll learn why data driven identification of patterns is essential, how school connectedness dramatically impacts attendance, and why family partnerships built on support rather than judgment produce better results. Stay with me. I'm so happy to have you as a listener today. This is Solutions Coaching and Teaching Strategies, the podcast that extends education beyond the classroom. A show that offers educators and caregivers strategies to try right away and ensure every student receives the inspiration and support they need to thrive. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Friday's bonus episode of Solutions Coaching and Teaching Strategies. I'm Olivia Wall, and I'm here to reflect on my conversation with Naomi Tolentino Miranda about chronic absenteeism. If you haven't listened to Monday's episode yet, I encourage you to pause this and go back to hear Naomi's incredible insights directly. For those of you who joined us, wasn't Naomi amazing? Her work as coordinator of student support programs with Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools is truly transformative. Today, I want to dig deeper into some key takeaways from our conversation and offer additional strategies you can implement in your schools and classrooms. So let's start with what struck me most about our conversation: the power of shifting from punitive to preventative approaches when addressing chronic absenteeism. Naomi highlighted how focusing solely on truancy and unexcused absences misses the bigger picture. When we look at average daily attendance rates, they often mask deeper issues. What's remarkable about Naomi's approach is that she's looking at all absences, excused, unexcused, and suspensions, to identify patterns and address root causes. This is such a crucial mind shift. Instead of asking, why aren't students showing up? We need to ask, what barriers are preventing them from being here? This national trend toward preventative approaches mirrors what's happening in many states, including an initiative I recently learned about in Ohio. The Stay in the Game network is showing that this shift, moving from punitive measures to supportive ones, is making a measurable difference, with network districts reducing chronic absenteeism at twice the rate of other districts. And I'd like to expand on some of the barriers Naomi mentioned and add a few others I've encountered in my work with schools. The first barrier: school connectedness issues. Students who don't feel connected to at least one adult at school are more likely to be chronically absent. This is why relationship building must be intentional and prioritized from day one. 2. Communication challenges. And these go beyond language barriers to include cultural understandings about education and school expectations. Many families don't understand the cumulative impact of multiple absences, especially if they're spread out over time. 3. Work responsibilities, particularly for our older students, especially those from immigrant families. Work often takes priority over education when economic needs are pressing. 4. Mental health concerns. Anxiety, depression, and trauma can make attending school overwhelming. We know that the pandemic intensified these issues for many students. 5. Health issues. Chronic health conditions, frequent illnesses, or inadequate healthcare access can lead to numerous absences. One barrier I'd add that we're seeing more frequently is sleep disruption and dysregulation. Many students, especially adolescents, struggle with poor sleep hygiene, late night technology use, and schedules that don't align with their natural sleep patterns. This ties in with the example that I shared with Naomi about the high school that adjusted a student's schedule to start later in the day, which completely resolved their attendance issues. Research from the American Academy of Pediatrics consistently shows that adolescents biologically need 8 to 10 hours of sleep, and their natural sleep cycle shifts to later hours. Yet, most high schools start before 8:30 a.m., creating a biological mismatch that can contribute to chronic absenteeism. And what I found most powerful about Naomi's approach is her emphasis on individualized solutions. There's no one-size-fits-all answer to chronic absenteeism because the why behind each student's absences is unique. This requires us to be curious rather than judgmental. So I've thought about this a lot, and I thought I'd offer some practical strategies for how you might implement this approach. First, conduct attendance audits regularly. Don't wait until a student hits the chronic absenteeism threshold. Look for patterns. Are there specific days of the week they're missing? Particular classes? Is it morning or afternoon absences? These patterns can reveal underlying issues. Second, create a welcoming morning ritual in your classroom or school. Something as simple as greeting each student by name at the door or having a predictable, engaging morning activity can increase students' motivation to attend. Third, implement check-in, check-out systems for students with attendance concerns. This pairs students with a staff member who greets them in the morning and checks in at the day's end, providing that critical school connection Naomi emphasized. Fourth, reconsider your makeup work policies. Many schools have punitive policies that make it nearly impossible for students to catch up once they've missed several days. Instead, create clear, accessible systems for students to access missed work and receive support in completing it. Fifth, utilize peer mentors. Naomi mentioned how powerful student-to-student mentoring can be. Consider pairing students who struggle with attendance with peers who can help them navigate makeup work and social reintegration after absences. And I was particularly intrigued by Naomi's discussion of their attendance dashboard. Data can be such a powerful tool when used correctly. If you're in a leadership position, consider how you might implement something similar in your context. Remember, the key is looking beyond average daily attendance to examine patterns by grade level, patterns by demographic groups, patterns by classroom or subject area, and temporal patterns like time of day, day of week, time of year. This data can reveal systemic issues you might otherwise miss. For example, if absences spike during certain units or in particular classes, it might indicate engagement issues rather than external barriers. One aspect I wish we'd had more time to explore with Naomi is the role of school climate and culture in addressing chronic absenteeism. When students feel safe, valued, and that they belong at school, attendance improves. Maybe consider auditing your school environment through these lenses. Do your physical spaces feel welcoming to all students and families? Are your communication systems accessible to all caregivers? Do your discipline practices create or remove barriers to attendance? And does your curriculum reflect and value the diverse experiences of your student population? Small changes in these areas can have significant impact on attendance patterns. And let's also talk about the power of family partnerships that Naomi emphasized. She mentioned how creating spaces where families feel welcomed and not judged is essential. This requires intentional effort and often a shift in mindset for educators. And I was grateful to read a piece by Dr. Rebecca Winthrop. She wrote about the Stay in the Game conference in Ohio, a convening dedicated to boosting student attendance and engagement. She shared that this network, co-founded by the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, the Cleveland Browns, and Harvard's Proving Ground, is showing impressive results. Districts in the network saw an 8% reduction in chronic absenteeism last year, compared to just a 4% reduction in districts outside the network. One strategy that stood out came from a district leader who shared how a school reduced chronic absenteeism by 20%. The principal's approach was beautifully simple. They called each absent student or their family every day just to say, "We missed you today." And let me emphasize that the message wasn't punitive. There was no scolding or threatening. The message was, I care about your child. it's important they're in school, and we're here to help. This demonstrates how we can set high expectations and be supportive simultaneously. And this aligns perfectly with what Naomi discussed about shifting from punitive to supportive approaches. The Stay in the Game Network participants consistently reported that this narrative shift was at the core of their success. Some other effective family partnership strategies included implementing home visits at the beginning of the school year before attendance problems emerge. These visits should focus on relationship building rather than problem solving. When families have a positive connection with the school from the start, they're more likely to engage when challenges arise. Another approach is to create caregiver support networks within your school. Naomi mentioned parent classes, which can be powerful. Consider also creating spaces where parents can support each other through shared challenges. I'd also like to highlight the importance of trauma-informed approaches when addressing attendance. Naomi mentioned this several times, and it's crucial. Many chronically absent students have experienced trauma that impacts their ability to attend school consistently. Some trauma-informed attendance interventions might include flexible arrival procedures for students with morning triggers, calm spaces where students can regulate before joining the classroom, check-ins with trusted adults throughout the day, and gradual reintegration plans for students returning after extended absences. Remember that behavior, including attendance patterns, is communication. Our job is to decode what students are trying to tell us through their absences. I loved that Naomi emphasized how parent voice is so strong in driving systemic change. This is something we often overlook. When addressing chronic absenteeism at a systems level, caregivers should be equal partners in developing solutions. You could consider forming an attendance task force that includes parents of previously chronically absent students. Their insights into barriers and effective solutions are invaluable. Also, be transparent with your community about attendance data and goals. Making this information public creates accountability and often motivates collective action. And as we wrap, I want to share one more insight from Dr. Rebecca Winthrop that resonated with me. In her words, make school a place worth showing up to. At the Stay in the Game conference, she presented on her book, The Disengaged Teen, co-authored with Jenny Anderson, and sparked conversations about supporting explorer mode when students are curious, engaged, and driven to learn. One district leader mentioned working to bring more fun into his schools. Half joking, he said, "Not sure I'm even allowed to use that word." But his point was profound. How did we get to a place where learning isn't fun? This connects to what Naomi discussed about school connectedness. Students are more likely to attend when they feel engaged and valued. This work is important and part of a national movement. It's championed by the nonprofit Attendance Works, along with the Education Trust and AEI, all with the intent to cut chronic absenteeism in half over the next 5 years. It's challenging work, but it's possible. As we're seeing with initiatives like Stay in the Game and leaders like Naomi. Now, I thought I'd leave you with a few questions to reflect on in your own context, and I'll also include these in the show notes. 1. How does your school or district currently approach chronic absenteeism? Is it primarily punitive or preventative? 2. What data are you collecting about attendance, and how are you using it to identify patterns and develop targeted interventions? 3. How are you building and maintaining relationships with chronically absent students and their families? 4. What barriers to attendance exist in your specific community, and how might you address them? 5. How are you celebrating and recognizing improvements in attendance, even small ones? 6. Most importantly, is your school a place worth showing up to for every student? I hope this bonus episode has given you some practical strategies to implement in your own work. Remember Naomi's core message. Chronic absenteeism requires individualized, trauma-informed approaches that address the unique why behind each student's absences. Thank you for listening to this bonus episode. If you're implementing strategies to address chronic absenteeism in your context, I'd love to hear about them. Email me at scolutionspodcast@gmail.com or connect with me on social media. And remember that every day a student is present is an opportunity to make a difference in their life. I can't wait to see you on Monday. Until then, take care. Scolutions Coaching and Teaching Strategies is created, produced, and edited by me, Olivia Wall. Thank you to my older son, Benjamin, who created the music playing in the background. You can follow and listen to Scolutions wherever you get your podcasts, or subscribe to never miss an episode and watch on YouTube. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email at scolutionspodcast@gmail.com. Let me know how your school or district is navigating chronic absenteeism. And tune in every Monday for the best research-backed coaching and teaching strategies you can apply right away to better the lives of the children in your care. And stay tuned for my bonus episodes every Friday, where I'll reflect and share connections to what I learned from the guests that week. See you then.